Merry Christmas and welcome to the Daily Space Weather Show. Today we're starting things out with some difference imagery, along with our 193 angstroms SDO, that's 304, 60-minute running difference, along with the 193 angstroms. So lots of plasma motions happening, and the difference imagery will help to highlight those plasma motions. Multiple coronal mass ejections to cover. Are they earthly directed? We'll talk about it. You may have noticed once again another portion of the Lance Armstrong plasma filament here blasting off. That's up there in the upper right, the northwestern limb. And a few hours later, some activity up there in the northeastern limb. So at least 3 coronal mass ejections to cover. We'll get to it. A little bit of sunspot growth in this group down here. So we do have a rising likelihood of large solar flares on that western limb, especially the northwest. But X-ray flux has been dipping for the past day or two. So most likely place for a large flare is in that northwestern limb. Again, some growth happening quite rapidly of this sunspot group in the south central portion of the Earth-facing solar disk. Here is colorized magnetogram from SDO. And let's talk volcanoes. These are the ones that are erupting. Subanosejima starts off the list with a 6,000-foot ash plume. Ibu, 10,000-foot ash plume over Ibu. Luitolo, not sure on that one, but eruption observed by ground observer. Luitolo, continuing to effuse and explode. Looks like about a 6,000-foot ash plume over Luitolo. Semeru also extruding some new real estate there over East Java, Indonesia. Pyroclastic flows as well. Merapi exploding. 15,000-foot ash plume over western Sumatra. Tukono exploding. 10,000-foot ash plume. Popocatépetl exploding. 19,000-foot ash plume. Flight level 150 over Fuego. Fuego in Guatemala. It's a 15,000-foot ash plume. Nevado del Ruiz has stopped producing emissions. Also Sangay, no volcanic ash observed, but Revenador exploding. 14,000-foot ash plume in Sabancaya. A 24,000-foot plume of volcanic ash. And let's move on to seismic activity. It's been quite calm here. Seismic activity actually low over the past 24 hours. There are the past 90 days. These are the quakes of a 5 or greater magnitude. So Japan had a 5.0, one of the few. It was at extreme depth, over 330 kilometers depth, for that 5.0 at 4:49 Universal Time this morning. And then nothing for a long, long time. In fact, that's it. 1 5 or greater magnitude quake for the past 24 at Japan at a depth of over 330 kilometers. Next, moving back to space. A frontier. Here are the past 24 hours from SDO. The house favorite wavelength, 171 angstroms. And let's zoom in and add 304 angstroms difference imagery, 60-minute running difference. Next, let's talk some stats. The radio flux now down to 164 solar flux units. Solon.info needs an update. That's the past year, except for the past about day. The black line there is the radio flux. The red line is the sunspot number. And check it out, Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard here, forecasting some geomagnetic unrest. Looks like a CME is headed in Earth's direction. CME impact, a minor one, is coming. So here is NOAA's forecast, their Enlil spiral model. Late Wednesday night. Minor CME impact expected there. mostly missing off to the north, actually. So that gives us an idea of which CME is earthly directed. We'll also take a look and see if NASA forecasted again. This is NOAA's forecast. That's CME mostly off to the north. According to that model, here's NASA's Enlil spiral. And NASA has it a little bit farther to the south than NOAA's model there. So NASA looking like it's expecting more of a direct hit, but a very diffuse CME there. So again, don't expect big fireworks from that. The likelihood of aurora at mid-latitudes, not really that high. Next Earth magnetic moment from space. For the past 4 hours, we have geomagnetically calm conditions, so don't expect to see major gyrations happening here. That is our geospace magnetosphere movie, the Space Weather Modeling Framework. Here's another product of the Space Weather Modeling Framework. The ground magnetic perturbations map depicting magnetic flux density at the ground level, also for the past 4 hours. Also, things have been calm, geomagnetically speaking. KP index currently at 1.67. KP 1.67 is the current state of geomagnetism on a global scale. And next, the solar wind here. And we are seeing quite different measurements from the ACE and the Discover. So the ACE is seeing a more diffuse and slower solar wind. That's the ACE's data, only about 1.75 protons per cubic centimeter for the density. Solar wind velocity 433. At the Discover, quite a bit faster, about 450, and a lot denser as well, at about 11.5, about 10 protons per cubic centimeter for the density. So also some gyrations continuing to happen there, a bit of a sputtering happening. Two different solar wind regimes are still present, but mostly this one. At about 11 protons per cubic centimeter for the density, and the speed about 450 kilometers per second. The GOES magnetometers here are pretty uneventful there, unremarkable, I'll say, for the GOES magnetometers. And next, our top view ecliptic plane field plot. So Earth is in a south pole current sheet. We have some better defined coronal holes rotating in, which we'll get to here momentarily. Before that, our line of sight ecliptic plane field plot. Again, Earth is in a south pole sector right now of the heliosphere. South pole magnetic sector. Here's our line of sight field plot. And finally, coronal holes. So again, we do have some more well-defined coronal holes rotating in here right around the eastern equatorial region. And as our regular viewers may have come to expect, we are seeing the forecasted increase in coronal holes. No surprises there. Let's take a look at those from SDO. So there you go, another trans-equatorial coronal hole here rotating in, and let's get the sunspots. Sunspot number is at about 130. Yes, make it 120. 120. 100, 110, 120. I'll say 121 for the sunspot number. And here's our flare probability monitor and scoreboard. Again, my favorite place for a large flare is the northwestern limb. So that's the number one spot. Number two spot is 3531. Again, like I said, it's been exhibiting rapid growth in the past just a few hours. And that should be pretty easy to view in the SDO continuum. So this sunspot down here is the main location of sunspot evolution. Flare watch in the northwest, the upper right of your image. Next, we'll move on to energetic particles and flares. A little bit of a spike in the proton flux there. Some minor relativistic particle event happening, but practically at baseline levels. So not super exciting there. And as far as the X-ray flux goes, no major flares. They've simmered down. Our background flux is looking like it's right around a C1 or a B 9.99. So very close to back into a B-class background X-ray flux here. Again, it has been diminishing over the past 36 hours. Next, we'll look at 131 angstroms briefly. There are the past 24 hours from SDO's hottest AIA wavelength, one of the many species of ionized iron covered by the Solar Dynamics Observatory. Next, star chart. That is skyandtelescope.org. And if you look over the early evening sky, you might see the moon there. And then Jupiter. And then further along the ecliptic, the second largest planet in the solar system, Saturn. Next, our forecast for the solar system. This is where things are today. Here's where things will be next year on New Year's Day. Earth is moving into a lonely gas giant free side of the solar system. Next, our astronomy photo of the day. And check it out. It's a cathedral, a mountain, and the crescent moon. Pretty sweet image. Somewhere in Italia, the country of Italy. And that is the Basilica of Superga. The Basilica of Superga. apod.nasa.gov if you want to check it out on your own. Next, CMEs, and like I said, we have multiple CMEs to cover. That is 105 frames from yesterday, and at least 4 of them there on yesterday's images. Make it 5. Well, there's 1. Here's 2. There's 3, 4, and there's 5. Here are today's CMEs, and there have been some additional events. So there's 1. There's 2. And the one you saw out of the north-northwest is the one that has the earthly directed component. So we'll get to that. First, we'll show C3 as well. Let's get a little closer here. Anyway, folks, minor CME impact expected Wednesday night. So we'll also show stereo A, which is located right there where that red circle is. And there's the raw coronagraph on the left, difference imagery on the right. Some pretty spectacular CMEs there in the past 48 hours. And there's a great moment in here, right in there, right about there. Looks like a radiation symbol. Looks like some missing data there as well. Let's switch to our custom coronagraphs. These are 24-hour videos. You've got 193 angstroms SDO in the middle. So one of those northerly CMEs is the one that's earthly directed. And it's the one that came from right in this area right here. So I would tend to agree that will have an earthly directed component. It will be minor. It's looking pretty diffuse, but there you go. Those are 24-hour videos for you. Here we've dropped the C3 and added the 304 angstroms 60-minute running difference. And let's drop the coronagraphs entirely and get back to where we started. So let's move back to filaments now, since they could continue to erupt. There are filaments from Cerro Tololo. We may have some more active regions rising up there in the northeast and the southeast. Here's the colored imagery. Let's bring up the last image here and take a brief count of how many filaments we really have. Let's bring it back a few frames here. There we go. So we're going to say this is 1, this is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's a pretty good number of filaments on the Earth-facing portion of the disk. And before we get to bonus features, here are the past few hours from the Go 16 SUVI. But it's bonus features time, so let's do it. Bonus features. Here we are. Welcome to the bonus features segment. Starting out with satellite charging hazards. There ain't none. It's smooth sailing for satellites. There goes electron flux here at kind of low levels, which is about what the forecast predicted. There is the 1-year graph of the electron flux, the greater than 2 mega electron volt electron fluence. And there's the forecast model, and we are seeing lower levels in the forecast. Those green boxes are NOAA's forecast. The yellow diamonds are the observation. We'll also show the layer where it's measured, the F layer. And that is approximately where it is located most of the time. And once again, we have geomagnetically calm conditions here, so you're not going to see a lot of anomalous stuff likely on there. There's the anomaly in megahertz from the 30-day median, and things are looking pretty unremarkable. There's a latest 2245. We'll also show the WAM, the whole atmosphere model, the global ionosphere nowcast. Good for GPS and radio users alike. We'll also show total electron content by itself, which is free electrons to about 12,500 miles of altitude down to your handset level. Here it is. Those are the most likely places to see GPS errors, according to the coupled thermosphere, ionosphere, plasmasphere electrodynamics model. We'll close out space weather with the latest intensitygram and colorized magnetogram. Now you might see some magnetic organization happening up here. When we did show prep, there were no sunspots to be seen there. And there are still no sunspots to be seen there. But there could be some rising over that limb, also in the southeast. Anyway, there's the latest image And let's move on to meteorology. Now, there's a low pressure that's starting to move into South Dakota, moving across South Dakota, really. And that is largely what is in control of U.S. weather. There's a great depiction of it from nullschool.net. All roads point to South Dakota when it comes to atmospheric roads, because the surrounding pressure is much higher. Anyway, here come your regularly scheduled meteorology segments. Surface winds of the eastern world, jet streams of the eastern world, jet streams of the central world, surface winds of the central world, surface winds of the west, and the jet streams. Clouds and fog are next. As we zoom in closer and closer to the lower 48 and to 2024. And here's the low we were talking about. Just moving into South Dakota as we create the video. Kind of moving up the Kansas-Iowa border there, really. I mean, the Nebraska-Iowa border, rather. So that's what's going on. And here's our new snow forecast. This is the next 3 days. The GFS model forecasting more snow than the Euro model. I'm sorry, the Euro model forecasting more snow than the GPS. The GPS model much milder there. Heavier snows on the Euro model. So there's the next 3 days of new snow Euro model. Next 3 days of new snow GFS model. We'll zoom out to show the whole nation before we move to the weather.gov station. Weather.gov. Whether or not your location is lit is up to you to find out. Those are too many counties for us to cover. But we're going to scroll down and show you the key, as we're known to do. And all that orange is blizzard warning. Yeah, blizzard warning. Here comes some forecasts, starting with the GFS 72-hour pressure and precipitation. Freezing rain is in the forecast, and it's already falling in places like South Dakota and Minnesota. North Dakota will get a nice glaze as well. We'll also show total accumulated positive snow depth change in inches for the same model, the GFS 72-hour. And we'll also show temperature anomaly forecast in degrees Celsius. Same model, GFS 72-hour model. Also lightning, and we've seen some around Cuba. There's a full globe view. Lots of lightning over South America once again. And let's check our real-time lightning map, as we did see some lightning south of Cuba when we did show prep. There's your current lightning map from lightningmaps.org. Lightningmaps.org, real-time lightning maps. For those who want to know where the active strikes are. By the way, if you enjoy the content, press the like button. Thanks to our new YouTube subscribers. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. It's only the world's most comprehensive daily space weather show and most detailed solar imagery in the known universe. So press like, and if you're new, press subscribe. That's okay, we'll wait. Smashomash.com contains all of our links, so support the channel by visiting our links. Smashomash.com, and welcome to the Neo Renaissance. We created a massive web ring to benefit people like you. We're going to close out the video with the latest U.S. Doppler radar. So there is the full 50-state view. Here is the lower 48 view. There is the clouds and fog view. And there is the water vapor view. A great example here of a high pressure zone creating an impulse, as this air is quite dry and hence quite massive. You can see the way it's having its way, just pushing this moisture up to the north. Here's a recap. U.S. Doppler radar, clouds and fog, and there is the water vapor, and here is me closing things out. Thanks for tuning in. I've been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, signing off, and may that solar wind be at your back. Whoa!